Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trilby Berger, MetaMetrics Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for today's presentation as we unveil MetaMetrics research efforts in the area of vocabulary and a resulting vocabulary tool that we now have available for partners, the Lexile PowerV. Just a few logistics to get out of the way here. If you find yourself experiencing any technical issues, you might want to jot that number down there, 919-886-0019, or you can chat with us if you are able to get into the WebEx, and we'll try to help you out. Toward the end of the presentation here, or actually as the presentation is going along, you can be submitting your questions to all panelists, which can be selected from the drop-down menu in the Q&A panel, and then we're going to address those questions at the end of the presentation. And just to let you know, too, a follow-up email is going to be coming to you after this event. It'll contain the PowerPoint presentation that you see today, along with some other materials to give you more information about our vocabulary work and the tool. Our agenda today, I'm going to do a quick introduction of our presenters, and then we'll talk about the vocabulary research, then actually talk about the Lexile PowerV tool, and then tell you how you can get that tool. So let me introduce you, please, to my colleagues and our presenters today. We'll have Ryan Leathers, who is the VP of Engineering, who will be presenting the new tool for you, and Jeff Elmore, Senior Research Engineer, who has been very involved in the vocabulary research effort here at MetaMetrics, and he'll be talking with you about that. And Emily Weller, who also works in strategic partnerships as manager, will talk to you about how you can get the tool. So I will turn this over now to Jeff Elmore, who will talk to you about the research.
All right. So what I'd like to do is start by telling you about 4 big ideas in vocabulary research that have guided our thinking, and then I'll tell you some more about the specific research that we've done here at MetaMetrics. So the first idea is really just about the importance of vocabulary. It's been widely acknowledged that vocabulary plays a critical role in reading comprehension and is associated with a lot of positive outcomes. One study, for example, showed that vocabulary knowledge in first grade was actually a reasonable predictor of reading performance in the freshman year of high school. So if this is an area where we can provide tools and services that can help to foster vocabulary development, we have a real opportunity to positively impact students' lives. So this first point about the importance of vocabulary should not be surprising when we think about this second point, which is that vocabulary development is inherently intertwined with knowledge development, building knowledge of the world. And that's what we're really interested in with schooling. We want our students to build broad knowledge of the world. And in doing that, of course, you'll need to learn a lot of words. But there's also this reciprocal relationship wherein learning certain words helps you to build more knowledge from the reading that you do. So when we think about vocabulary development, what we're really interested in is developing knowledge of the world through the lens of vocabulary. So this third point is related to the important and unique role that texts play in vocabulary development. So texts represent a significant source of exposure to new words and concepts for students. And academic texts, in particular, often contain words and concepts that may be especially unfamiliar because they're not well represented in the student's oral language experience, like conversations and stories and movies and television. And this has been something that I think there's been a lot of attention on, academic text and academic language in the Common Core, and that's an important facet of our vocabulary research as well. The final point relates to vocabulary instruction, and there's a lot of research that supports the notion that the most effective vocabulary instruction involves students encountering words, having meaningful encounters with words in text. You can't just have a list of vocabulary words and students look up definitions that's not the most effective way to teach vocabulary. It needs to be situated within a text. So those are some big ideas that have guided our research thinking and thinking about what sorts of products and services we might develop to help foster vocabulary development. So a team here at MetaMetrics has been working on several vocabulary research projects in collaboration with Michael Graves, a prominent vocabulary researcher, and others. And as we complete these projects, we take the results from them and work with other folks in our organization and integrate those findings into products and services that are then available for our partners. So in thinking about where can we maybe provide some tools and services that will help to foster vocabulary development, we decided that focusing on tools that would help to select a subset of high-interest words from a particular text to facilitate comprehension and to contribute to long-term vocabulary growth. We felt this is an area that we could make a contribution. And the selected words, these high-interest words, we think should have three characteristics. And I'll tell you about each of them, but I'll just name them now. So we think the words should be challenging. We don't want to focus on words that we think the majority of readers of a text would already be familiar with. We want to focus on words that are thematic, related to the key topics and themes in a particular text. And to the degree possible, we want to try and pick words where there'll be more consequence for learning that word in terms of your future reading and learning experience. So diving in on the first of these criteria, challenging words, of course, we're always thinking about differentiating instruction, and we understand that the words that may present challenge to one reader might not present challenge to another. And so to identify challenging vocabulary words, we actually need to place the reader, the text, and the individual word all on a common scale, the Lexile scale. So of course we can already place readers and text on the Lexile scale, and now we want to be able to place individual words on the Lexile scale. So this was one of the research projects that we engaged in, and it is designed to assign Lexile measures to individual words. So I want to talk a little bit about this. This work parallels the development of the original Lexile theory and Lexile analyzer in that these Lexile word measures, like Lexile text measures, are ultimately based on students reading text. So when we develop the original Lexile theory, when we develop the analyzer, we go out and we do a study. We have a lot of kids reading real text and answering assessment items. And then we analyze those patterns of responses to those assessment questions. And we can use that as a basis for determining which texts are presenting more challenge to readers and which texts are presenting less challenge. We then developed a Lexile analyzer that makes an accurate prediction of that challenge level. So it's ultimately based in students reading text. For this Lexile vocabulary or Lexile word measures, we've used the same procedure. We start with nearly 7 million item responses from over 20,000 students from a variety of different texts, and we look at these pattern of responses. We say, well, this word, has been encountered hundreds, thousands of times across a variety of articles. Which words are tending to be more difficult for students? Which words are tending to be less difficult for students? We can already make a prediction about how many correct answers a student will get overall from a text. Now we want to be able to say, well, which words do we think are going to present more or less challenge? So we start with that, and then using frequency data from our corpus, we're able to calculate Lexile word measures for 75,000 unique words. And just to give you a sense of what that means, in the average text, we would have Lexile measures for between 96 and 98% of the running words, so it's quite a comprehensive database. Or a little live difficulty. So I just want to give you a sense of what these Lexile word measures look like. So this is essentially the Lexile map for words. We start at BR to 200L, and we find some very simple words like hide and find, up through higher Lexile levels, up to the top where we would find words that would likely be unfamiliar to less able readers like laureate or circumspection or vivacity. So the next criterion that we'll talk about is trying to select words that are thematic to the key ideas and themes of a text. And I want to talk about why this is important. You know, when we think about our ultimate goal of building knowledge, knowledge building begins with meaning making in a particular text. We build knowledge when we read and comprehend text and add new words to our vocabulary and add new knowledge. So we want to make sure that we are highlighting the important concepts in a particular text to facilitate that meaning making and knowledge building. The way in which we're doing this, we are again leveraging our corpus, and we look for words in a particular text that are used relatively more frequently in that text as compared with other texts generally in our corpus. And this tends to highlight the words that are related to the key themes and topics of a text. The other advantage of this approach is that it will also tend to privilege words that are repeated in that particular text. So if you think about a pre-reading activity where as a student we talk about the meanings of the key words in the text, and then they have repeated meaningful encounters with those words in a particular text. So the final criterion is this consequential word. To the degree that we can, we want to try and pick words that will maximize utility for students in the other texts they encounter. So when we think about that reciprocal relationship between knowledge building, what are those words that help to foster this generative vocabulary, that help students to build meaning and knowledge from the new text they encounter? So we are looking at two criteria. We're focusing on these academic words that have been highlighted in the Common Core. Those are words that are important for building knowledge in a variety of texts. And we also look at the size of words morphological family, so derivation and then inflections with prefixes and suffixes. All other things being equal, it's more valuable to learn a word that's part of a large word family than a word that is a single word or has only a few members. So I just want to summarize these key points. The first, of course, is that vocabulary development is critically important for academic success. The primary goal is knowledge building, and we can think about knowledge building through the lens of vocabulary development. We think an area where we can make a significant contribution is in offering tools to select high-interest words from a particular text for a particular reader, and we think these words should be challenging, thematic, and consequential. I've enjoyed sharing some of our research with you. Of course, our research efforts are always ongoing, and as we complete new projects, we'll bring those results over and do another session like this and tell you about it. So I'll pass it on now to Ryan, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the specific offering.
Thanks, Jeff. The MetaMetrics engineering department, in close cooperation with the R&D effort Jeff just described, took up the task of operationalizing this research. And our goal was to produce a tool that might help our partners to incorporate scientifically selected high-value words into their own products. Our effort has produced the Lexile PowerV web service. Jeff explained the why behind the research, and my comments will try to focus on the touch points of this new service. MetaMetrics already offers a variety of web services to our partners, such as the Lexile Analyzer, the scoring bays, the forecasting and R2B tools. And all of these kinds of services are intended for use by our partners in partner products. We're continuing that strategy with PowerV. There are two broad use cases we've imagined for this tool. First is creating vocabulary lists where the word selection is primarily influenced by the text. And second, creating lists where the word selection is most influenced by reader ability. Everything you need to create these kinds of vocabulary lists is included in a convenient API and only a few lines of code. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Software developers are able to request vocabulary for a given text and get back a list that can be used in any number of imaginable ways. So to be crystal clear, the web service API is not a complete standalone application, but is instead a component that you use in order to add our research and technology into your own product. We host this service through Amazon, and it comes with built-in load balancing, auto-scaling, and monitoring. You don't need to purchase any hardware, there are no software licenses, and you don't have to worry about security or bug fixes. You don't even need an Amazon account. Let me show you just how easy this is to use. Next slide. In only a few lines of code, a developer can call a single method and use that to pass in text and get back a list of scientifically selected high-value words. If you already use our book API, you can also request a vocabulary list by ISBN, provided it's part of our Lexile titles database. The default behavior is to select 10 words that are in the range of +50 to +250 Lexile above the passage measure. As an example, the novel Black Beauty has a Lexile measure of 850. These are the words selected by our default values. If you visit the Lexile.com website and search for this book, you'll find that we've included PowerV words under the book details view. Notice the section at the bottom, which allows you to submit a reader measure for a particular reader. This ability measure could be above or below the difficulty measure on the book. In this example, a reader ability measure of 950 resulted in a list of tailored vocabulary. This is made possible through the options available in the API. You can specify a minimum and maximum Lexile range value, the number of words you'd like returned, and you can create and use an unlimited number of word lists that can be used to filter the results. We think you'll be able to use these options in order to bring high-value words into your differentiated instruction programs. You might use a word list for a particular student to generate a custom activity. As examples, I've included a few things here that I created using my list from Black Beauty: a word search, a crossword puzzle, graphic organizer, and personal glossary. We're excited about this new web service, and we're interested in seeing your creativity as you incorporate our research into your educational products. Now we'll invite Emily Weller to explain to you how you can get this service.
Thanks, Ryan. So now I'll talk about how you can become a Lexile PowerV partner. There are currently two options: a license agreement with us to access the Lexile PowerV web service, and through our resource measurement services agreement as an add-on. The Lexile PowerV web service is used with our titles database or analyzer to receive Lexile PowerV word lists. As mentioned earlier, both word lists can be custom tuned for the user's needs. You can change the number of words returned as well as the Lexile range. And as Ryan noted, when passing through ISBNs, the web service will only return words for ISBNs that have Lexile measures associated with them. The second is an add-on through our resource measurement services. When sending in your books and content for certified Lexile measures, partners can opt to receive key vocabulary on selected titles along with your book measures. We can also provide Lexile PowerV word lists for titles that we've previously measured. It would be a simple request made by the publisher. So how do you get it? What you've seen today is available now. You can contact me, Emily Weller. I'm happy to follow up with all interested partners to discuss individual use case and business terms. We're really excited about this great new offering from Lexile and MetaMetrics, and we look forward to working with you to enhance your product or service with Lexile PowerV.
Great, thanks to all the presenters, and looks like we are starting to get some questions here. Please feel free to begin submitting them, and we'll entertain those here. We have one now. Is it possible to get books added to your list for the ISBN search? This person works for a publisher.
Yes. That would be, if we've measured the title, just sending in the additional ISBNs. If the title currently does not have a Lexile measure, That would just be setting up an agreement with us and submitting it to our measurement services to receive the Lexile measure, and soon to be incorporated the PowerV.
And just waiting to see if there are other questions here. Again, as it says, you can submit your questions to all panelists, which can be selected from the drop-down menu in the Q&A panel. We'll give it just a few seconds here. Coming in there at the top of the chat that looks like the big. Okay, let's see. We have another question here. Thank you, Whit. Can you provide the sentences that go with the words?
I'll take that. That's not part of the service that we're offering here, but that is an interesting idea. We love to entertain interesting ideas. And
let's see, the next question. Thank you, Brian. Can we store your data per ISBN such that we don't have to inquire again and again for the same ISBN in the future?
Yeah, certainly. When you get a result, you're more than welcome to store that result and use it in any way you see fit.
Great. And another question, thank you, Larry. Does this service work with journal and newspaper content found in databases?
Yes, so long as you have sufficient quantity of text, you would want more than a couple of sentences. You'll be able to submit that text. It doesn't really matter where it comes from, and we'll analyze that text and produce good vocabulary lists.
And Ryan, there was an extension to that question that we're just seeing now. That is there a way to get the list for those passages? I'm assuming we need to resubmit the passages.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to hit your question exactly. When you submit text, we will return a list of vocabulary, and that is all. There's no unique identifier that comes along with it, and we don't return the text back with the result. You're just getting a list back. So you'll need to store that data if that's data you want to reference.
Heidi, if that didn't quite get, this is Trilby, if that didn't quite get at what you're looking for, feel free to email me. Let's see, and we have another one here. Can you please go back to the previous page where Emily was describing how to get PowerV and talk about those options again?
Yeah, so we've got the web service. As you'll see, is one of the two options. That's where you can put in your unique text and get the word list from that, or put through an ISBN from our database that has been measured and then receive the PowerV list based on the criteria that you set. And then the other is through our resource measurement services. So if you're a publisher and you're routinely sending in your books already, it would just be something you would then request, and we can return that back with the book measures.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about those services specifically, in terms of cost and how the contract would work, those sorts of things, please reach out to Emily directly and get into more detail on that. We have another question here. Thank you, Kimberly. Does PowerV work with the editor assistant? Good question.
Yeah, another good question. You know, we used the editor assistant as a little bit of a development grounds, if you will, to try some things out. So the answer is sort of. we know that there are a lot of synergies, perhaps, between what you might do with vocabulary and what you can do in the editor assistant. As it stands, we're offering this as a separate API, its own web service, and these vocabulary features are not part of the editor assistant. But again, we're certainly happy to entertain your good ideas and your creativity. And because both of these services are offered, there are certainly ways that you could benefit from both of them.
And just for a point of clarification, some of you may not yet know what the editor assistant is. I'm not sure we've talked with all of you about that. It is the Lexile Analyzer that I'm sure you're all familiar with a new type of interactive user interface in which you can, it allows you to upload and measure the text, or actually measure the text in line as you're creating it. It also, you can store the information, you can share it among your colleagues. So it has a lot of other bells and whistles that the Lexile Analyzer does not include. And Emily would also love to talk with any of you about that may be curious for more information. Another question came in. Can we mass update a school's data based on ISBN on a startup such that they can call up any item, those important words would be, such that as they call up any item, those important words would be displayed?
Yeah, I think if I understand that question correctly, you would just send a request for each ISBN you're curious about with the range that you're interested in, and you would get back a list of vocabulary. And you could do that for all of the books you were interested in.
Next question, thanks Brian. Can we get the database updated on a monthly basis instead of using the API?
Well, we currently offer a static download, and that's a tab-separated file. That's one option rather than using the API. Or you could simply make one API request per month, I suppose. Those would be ways to get a monthly update.
Brian, we'll take your name specifically, and Emily can reach out to you directly on this point about those options. Another question, is this service available for Spanish text or English only?
It is available for English only.
We'll wait one more minute here, see if we get another question before we close up. Okay. Thank you again, Whit. Will you start to show vocabulary level for books? For example, Number the Stars has a Lexile reading level of 670, but I'm guessing the vocab level alone would be much higher.
We are definitely interested in providing whatever other information might be valuable for targeting a book to a particular reader. And we have had discussions about showing some indication of the relative vocabulary level for books. We've actually been interested in talking with some of our users about the best way to communicate that information. So perhaps we can follow up with you directly and understand how you would use that data.
Do you anticipate it being available in Spanish in the future?
Certainly, we would like to offer all the capabilities we have in English in Spanish as well. So I can't make any specific claims, but that's a goal that I'm sure we would work toward over time.
Next question. Hello again, Heidi. If we are currently a partner, and you are, and we already submitted text to attain Lexile text measures, can the text be resubmitted now to get vocabulary lists for our unique text?
Yes, it can. If it's a book, we would just receive that information from you and provide you with that. If it's a passage or other content, we might have to work with you on getting that, the content again, but it would just be based on a case-by-case basis.
All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds here. Okay, we have another question here. Thank you, Jeffrey. Any idea about how much the service will cost as an add-on or through resource measurement services? We actually are still working out those details as we're talking to you today. We're even still putting together the formal contract language that would be required for such a license. But again, if you'll get in touch with Emily, and I'm sure she'll also be reaching out to all of you again, we'll be happy to talk through those details. Well, this has been great. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank all of the presenters and all the people who helped put this presentation together, but certainly to all of you who joined us today and spent some of your valuable time with us. We'll look forward to hearing from you to talk with you more about this. And as a reminder, we will be sending a follow-up email that will have this PowerPoint. It will also have some additional information about the Lexile PowerV web service. And we'd certainly be happy to talk with you and your team. We can do this presentation again if you wish for your particular teams, whatever you want as the next step. Thank you so much for your time.